All right, it's about that time, so I'm going to go ahead and get things started. First of all, welcome everybody. Thanks for taking the time out today to attend this webinar. My name is Stephen Kreutzfeldt, and I'm a pre-sales engineer here with CDI, and I'm going to be your host for today's webinar, which will be on building public portals, also known as configuring Laserfiche Weblink, which is the application that we'll be looking at today. If this is your first build along, what exactly is a build along? Well, it's meant to be an interactive experience designed to guide the viewers through the creation and deployment of a common business process. For example, today I'm going to show you how to configure and deploy a public portal using Laserfiche Weblink. If at any point you need help or have questions, go ahead and post those in the little floating GoToWebinar chat box or the questions area. Actually, the questions box would probably be better. And then I'll take some time at the end of the webinar to go through those and answer as many as possible. Tips for success. First of all, take good notes. Feel free to take screenshots as well. If you're anything like me, I'm a very visual person. I like to have those screenshots. Don't be afraid to ask any questions. Like I said, that question box is there exactly for this. Please complete the survey afterwards also. We do go through that. We're always looking for new ideas. I have a full lineup for this year, but I'm always willing to swap some of those out and present on whatever is going to be most popular. And also note this is going to be recorded and it will be available on YouTube probably by the end of the week. And individual sessions are available that if you'd like someone from CDI to reach out and work with you to deploy something or work on a specific issue with Weblink, we'd be more than happy to do that. So like I said, today's process is going to be configuring Weblink. I'm going to show you some of the tips and tricks that go into that as well. And the intended audience for this webinar, I'm going to say, is Laserfiche administrators and more intermediate Laserfiche users. You'll need access to Weblink, as well as the Weblink Designer. I'll show you how to access both of those if you have it, as well as the Laserfiche repository. Not mentioned here is the Laserfiche administration console. We might get into that a little bit, or we may just discuss it. We'll kind of see how it goes. So we're going to start out by looking at the Laserfiche Weblink Designer. I'll then show you a few tips and tricks on creating custom searches. And we'll finish things up by going through security. So with that, let's go ahead and get into it. So I have two applications open for Weblink right now. And the way that you're going to access these, they're both web applications. And so you'll need to go to https:// name of the server, or if you are on the server, you can use localhost /designer. You can probably also find it available in your start menu if you're actually on the server where it's installed. So if we go into our Laserfiche applications here, you know what, I'm just going to back up here. You should find it underneath VLs in your Laserfiche suite of applications. So if we expand that, you'll notice I have a lot of Laserfiche applications here. And toward the bottom, we have Weblink. And so there you can see the Weblink Designer. It looks like a blue crayon and an orange crayon, kind of. That will also basically do the same thing. It'll take you to this Weblink Designer URL. But the URL is localhost or the name of the server /designer. When you first open this up, it's going to default to the connection tab on the top left-hand corner. And a lot of this will be probably already set up. If you are using Cities Digital as your provider, our support team does a great job of making sure that it's connected with the server that you're going to be using, as well as the public user that's going to be automatically logged in. The way a lot of this works is essentially there's going to be a public user that's going to be a concurrent license that's able to log in and view certain folders, documents within your Laserfiche repository. Most commonly, we see this with cities who are looking to make certain documents like their agendas, minutes, resolutions, things like that public. So this is something that can be hosted on your website, where you click a button and it takes you to all the minutes, and Laserfiche Weblink can facilitate that. So the first step is to show, the server name that you have, as well as the repository that we're going to be looking at. I have a demo repository today for LF Government, and it's going to set up to auto login with Laserfiche credentials. You'll notice it's using a username and a password to automatically log in, which means you will have to have that public user, set up beforehand. Down here is where you're going to see the actual Laserfiche Weblink host URL. A lot of times it defaults to server name and then Weblink, not actually server name, but the name of the server. But you do have some flexibility on that if you want to have your own URL for that. The logging level and things like that probably aren't going to be as important. It's more for your support team in the back end and IT to see if there are any errors or people logging in. How much information do you want to see logged? So you probably don't need to worry about that so much. However, the session timeout, knowing that there is a limit on the number of people that can be in the portal at once. And so to ensure that you're maximizing that, you may want to take that down to 10 minutes or so and then save. Probably the most fun part of this is going to be the theme. If we go down to the theme tab, this is where you can actually customize the colors. So a lot of times cities and companies are going to want the Laserfiche Weblink portal to look very similar to the rest of your website, have those same colors and everything else. So this is where you can set that. It's using you can either go in and actually pick the colors, or you can use those RGB codes, the red, green, blue codes, that hashtag. Fun little fact about this: if you're not entirely sure what your colors are, there's an add-on in Chrome that you can actually just install. I believe it's called just the Chrome color picker. But what's cool about this is it just sits right here at the top, and if you open it up, you can actually hover over the different colors, and it'll show you what those colors are. So I'll actually give you that code by just hovering. Now the default colors are going to be green, white, grays, and some blues. But you can go ahead and change the color of the text, change the top bars, change the headers and footers, and everything else. And you'll notice to the right of the colors, we have the options to change our images as well. I've noticed that the images work best if they are a JPEG, but you can basically just go in, it'll let you browse out to a local folder, and then you can select those. One of the issues I've run into in the past is there may be a really nice logo or picture that you want to have on your website, but it's either way too big or maybe way too small. And so people will want to adjust those, make them smaller or larger. There's not a great way to do that just from here. I mean, really, you can just browse out to the image and the size is the size. There's not a great way to edit that. However, if you go out and let me go ahead and just show you what I'm working with right now. So this is our CDI logo. This is the actual portal itself. This is kind of the welcome page, not anything too exciting, just saying Laserfiche Weblink, our gateway, with a couple of quick links. But we see the CDI logo up here in the top left-hand corner. If I wanted to change that, I go out here, and a lot of times what I'll do is just simply right-click on this and then open with Paint, just regular old Microsoft Paint. And if you do that, you can then see it here. And what we can do is go to the resize option. And then if we just want to take it down a little bit, you can see the pixels right here. So maybe I want to take it down to 280, and then the vertical will adjust as well. And then we can just go ahead, File, Save As, and we'll call it CDI Logo 3. And you can just say OK there as well. And so then if we wanted to change this and add the CDI 3, we now have the smaller version of the logo, and you can see that it's got that 280 by 115. And there is some trial and error here that you'll need to go in, double check it to make sure that it is in fact sizing up the way that you want it to. But you have some flexibility there, and that's how I recommend doing that. You can change the main logo, you can change the background. If you want to have a giant picture up front as soon as you log in, you can do that as well. If you were to just go out and Google Laserfiche Weblink, you'll actually get a lot of cities who are pretty open and vocal that they are using Laserfiche Weblink, and you'll get to see some examples of those cities. So I'm going to discard my changes here. So the welcome page is going to be what we just saw here. This is what we call the welcome page. And you can customize this as well. As we've already seen, you can change the colors, you can change the pictures, but you can also change what it says. So right now it says, welcome to Laserfiche Weblink. So maybe you want to change that to, welcome to our public portal. Common text would be something like, browse and search for public documents. And you can have that search box right there on the front, which is just, it's going to operate exactly the same as the quick search tool within your Laserfiche repository. So it's looking for keywords, and then you can adjust it to say if it's going to be looking for folders or documents, and if it's going to be looking for it by name or by metadata, or if it's actually going to be using the OCR'd text and look for text searches. And I'll show you how we can change that as well. It does support multiple repositories as well, and that's one of the things that we set on our connection. For this one, we're looking at my LF government repository, but you can have multiple repositories, multiple pages. You have some flexibility there. So down here we have some custom links, and this is going to be quick links to allow the user to quickly browse out to a certain document type, or if you want other related links to different functions within your organization, you can do that as well. For example, I just added the CDI website here. So it'll pop us out to cdi.support, something that's relevant, but not necessarily associated with browsing. So the way we did that, we pop back over to our Weblink designer. You can go ahead and see this new custom link button. If we click on that, it'll give us a couple of answers. So first of all, we want to, it'll ask us to log in to make sure that we have the correct rights to edit this portal. I'm just gonna use my admin user. So now you have an option to choose from either a folder or document, a search form, or an external URL. So let's go through each one of these. If we want to have a folder or document, what that's saying is that when people first log in, there's an actual folder that we want them to be able to browse quickly to. And so it's showing us our folder structure right now. This is what Laserfiche is looking like. And we'll probably want something in the public folder. And in here, I've got things like minutes, ordinances, and resolutions, just as an example. And maybe I want them to be able to browse quickly to minutes. So we just hit OK, call it minutes, and there we have it. So if we were to actually save that and go back here and refresh our portal, you'll see that we have minutes right here. So if we were to click on that, it's going to take us actually right into that minutes folder. And so the user can then browse through and just go through our folder structure, which are broken into years. You'll notice you can actually see the breadcrumbs here as well. So we know that we're in the LF government repository, we're in the public folder in the minutes. So we can pop that open and look at all the minutes from 2018. And to get back home, we just click on the giant CDI logo. It'll take us back to our home page. So we can actually do the same thing with documents as well, that if we wanted to add another one and call it like the user guide or our mission statement, we can have a link that'll take you directly to a specific document and open that up also. So next thing I want to look at was the search form. Actually, we'll save that one for last. The external URL will just look like this. This is how I create the CDI URL, where you literally just go in, give it the title, and give it the URL, and it'll drop it in as we saw before. So that's what took us to that CDI. So you don't need too much information. That's pretty straightforward. The search form is a little more involved, and this is the second bullet point that I really wanted to look at today, because it's very powerful, but it can be a bit confusing. So let's walk through it. We have this other tab for search forms. So if we go over here, you'll see I already have one created called Search Minutes, but maybe we want to create another one. So I hit the little plus button. It's going to ask me what I want to call it. And maybe I'll just call it Search Ordinances. And give it a description and create it. So when I create it, it's going to open up the designer. Over here is your canvas. This is what features and functions the search form is going to have in it. And over here, you have the options to select some of them. So number one is going to be like the quick search. So we can drag that over and we can rename this. This is going to be like kind of like your Google search for this. Now you can say that we want to look for the name. We want to look for text. Any field, the fields are referring to your metadata fields. And then also annotation text. So that's saying that if you have a stamp that says paid, then it'll look for that stamp. So you can search by paid. Similarly, if you're looking for a sticky note, maybe sticky notes say attention of or care of finance department, then it'll look for that as well. But you can also have a list here as well to say that you want to define a certain list or certain radio group. And so you can update that as well. If you are somebody who is proficient in HTML, JavaScript, CSS, things like that, this is your playground. There are a lot of things you can do with the color, with the structure, with the searches and everything else to really add your own personal touch using CSS, which we aren't going to get into today. So the other option we have here is by date. A lot of times people will want to search by date. And so you can say that last modified date, creation date, or more commonly, what I like to see is date range of creation. So if you're looking for minutes or ordinances within a specific year, you may want to look for January to March of 2019 or something like that. So that's another option. And you can also add your own custom input using your own variables and your own text. And once again, you can customize that yourself. Now, most often when we use that kind of custom input or those custom texts, it's more or less just to say, please define the date and year or something like that. And so you can kind of have that. Custom input, pretty similar there, that you can have a very specific list, but it's more so it doesn't fit into the quick search or the date. So what do you want to do with this? I don't use it too often. Usually everything I have can be captured in here or within the search results where we can make it even more specific, which we'll look at here in a second. But the last one I wanted to look at was the template. So a lot of times, we would definitely recommend adding metadata templates to all of your documents, even if it's just one or two fields to say what it is. You'll see some of the examples that I have here are going to be things like agenda packets, minutes, ordinances, and resolutions. And if I open this up, I can say that you'll see my ordinance resolution type, number, agenda item number, governing board, and date. Those are actually the names of the fields that are on this template. So if I want to add all of those and say, feel free to search by any of these items, I'm now giving them a very clear visual on how to search for ordinances by things like ordinance number. So to go even further, if we pop over to our search results, this is actually getting built out rather by the designer. So by adding the Google search, the date range, and then all of my metadata fields, it's showing us that we want to make sure that our search is returning text, field, name, annotation that matches user input for that Google search. Creation date matches the user input and all of this. But we can actually go even further by adding our own custom syntax. Now, how many on this call speak Laserfiche syntax or even know what I'm talking about right now? Probably not many of you. If you did, good for you. That's incredible that you spent all that time. But there's a much easier way to do this. So I'm going to pop in and actually open up Laserfiche for a moment. And I'm going to show you how you can define your text by a lot more detail. So first we're going to open up my government repository quick. And in here we have the advanced search field. If you haven't used this before, a very powerful tool. I would recommend you look at some of the other YouTube videos I've put out on how to use the advanced search feature, or just attend, I don't know which one it is, but I did put it on my list for this year. So we are going to go back through the advanced search features. So I'm just going to go ahead and close some of these out, and we're going to start from scratch. In the customized search field, the first thing you're going to want to do is add your search syntax, because that's ultimately what's going to be written, and that's what we're going to copy and paste. That's the search syntax that's going to be used in our portal search. And maybe we want to say, so name is always going to be important, because the name will let you select if you want a document, a folder, or a shortcut. In this case, we're looking specifically for documents, but if you're looking for documents or shortcuts, I have a lot of clients who only keep the shortcuts in the public folder, and so the actual documents themselves are stored in a records management type of scenario, where the shortcut allows people to go in and browse without even interacting or actually being able to see the file itself. I often refer to this as putting the documents behind bulletproof glass. But here we can say we're looking for documents and shortcuts. If we were to just hit the search right then and there, it would bring back everything in the entire repository. Luckily, my repository is not too big, so it's not going to bring back a ton. But you'll notice it already wrote out our syntax. So looking for Laserfiche name equals we don't know what. It added a star. By the way, that asterisk is very powerful in Laserfiche. That is your wildcard that's saying I don't know, bring back everything. And it's looking for type equals D and S. D for document, S for shortcut. And I'm just going to cancel this because I really don't need all of these things, and I want to keep going. All right, so the next thing we're going to look at is we want to keep that search within a specific folder. So we'll choose our folder here, close, and we can hit the little ellipses here, and it'll allow us to browse out and select which folder we want to search in. Obviously, we're going to keep it in the public folder because that's really the only one that I want the public to be able to view. So now we can say, show me all documents and all shortcuts in public, and you'll notice it built out that syntax there as well. Now I only have meeting minutes in here for demo purposes, but now it's showing us all of that. And maybe I only want to find documents with a specific metadata field on them as well. I don't want to keep that limited, or with a certain template rather. So we can search by template, and we'll say admin minutes. So we search that again, and now it's showing us admin minutes, Laserfiche name equals this, type equals document, and shortcut within this folder. So we can then copy all of that, just Control C. We go back in here, we can actually put that in there. And now it's only going to limit our search to that location. So you can still search by all of these other criteria that we have here, but it's going to dial it back and hone it in even more. So that's one way that you could do that. So if we were to hit save, obviously it doesn't make any sense that you're going to be looking for ordinances and resolutions within the minutes, but I think you at least get the point. So the last piece then is going back to the, back here to the search forms and the custom links. And we now have our search form available here. So you can see a list of all of them, and you can always select them and hit the edit key if you want to change something about them. If we go over to custom links, you'll see that it's not actually here yet. That's because we need to hit new custom link. We need to choose our dropdown as a search form, and then we can then choose our search form search ordinances. Come on. Oh, I'm sorry. So you just simply select it, and then you also have to title it. To me, it seems like it should default to the title of the search form, but it doesn't. So if you're confused by this, then you are not alone. Give it a title, select the one you want, and then hit OK. Make sure it's highlighted. Then you can say OK. Then you have the search ordinances available. Make sure you hit that save button, very important. Then if we go back to our Laserfiche web link and refresh, just hit F5 and refresh it quick. It was there. Search ordinances are now there. So now they can pop in, and what the user will see when they log in, we click on that, is it should take us to that new search that we created. And everything's just a little bit laggy today, and I apologize for that. All right, well, while that loads or doesn't load, let's go back to Weblink Designer. So the next piece I want to look at is just the navigation. Here we go. All right, once again, everything's loading a little slowly. So this is just a couple of simple options to show if you want to have that welcome page link, you can. If you want to show the folder browser link, you can. But you can turn all of these off as well. So you have, once again, more flexibility with the end user experience and what it is they're seeing when they log in. So some quick radio buttons, turn them on and off. Feel free to take a look at it, see how it looks, and then make sure you hit that save button. The document viewer is going to allow you to add and make some changes to how you actually view the document. Once again, it's just going to be a couple of little options. So do you want to be able to have the cursor pan, or do you want to be able to zoom? What is the default zoom level going to be? If I'm being honest, I almost always keep these defaulted. That I've tried messing with them a little bit, and I never seem to like the results. I would say that Laserfiche had it right the first time. So a lot of these, it's good to know that they're here, but I usually leave them alone, except for the search results. So when the search results are brought back, you have the option to see what the context is from each of the text, either expanded or closed up. You can also see different levels of detail on what the documents that come back are. And so you basically have show, hide, or show minimized. And it shows you a little preview down here of what each one of those look like. The thumbnails, I usually show minimized, so that way if you want to be able to see that thumbnail, you can, but I mean, it kind of depends on how large the file is. Obviously, we want to show the context hits. That's going to be things like down here, we see the actual pages. So if you were to search for, apparently they searched for jeepney down here, and they found on page 1, it was listed here. On page 1 of this, it was found there. And so you see some information here about what it's going to look like. And as you kind of hide some of these, you'll notice how that changes. And so when individuals are searching for a specific word or a specific field or something like that, you'll be able to know what that's going to look like when they return it. Now, if you want to keep it very high level and just like show everything is minimized, I've seen that done. It's fine. And then just show the entry properties, or show everything minimized. So you just get a list with an option to show more information, and then you can expand. And then that's how you'll see all the thumbnails, all the context hits, everything else. Actually, as I'm going through this, I kind of like that. I kind of like everything minimized. So that way you just get 4 hits, very simple, and then you can just click into each one. It's kind of cool. You can show it in grid view, or you can leave it as default. I always recommend playing around with it. Everybody's kind of has their own preferences, what they like to see. And what's cool about this is it's yours. You can change it however you like. The last piece here is just going to be the public user. We're not going to look at search options or email right now. This is where you'll be able to see which repository it is, who the public user is, what's going to be open in the Weblink document viewer, PDF files, and other electronic documents. Things. When we say electronic documents, we're talking about things like PDF, Excel, emails, Word docs, anything that would have that electronic file that basically isn't an image file. Image file would be things like TIFFs, JPEGs, etc. And then you can actually update the column display as well. So when you open that up, which columns are displaying? Most commonly, you'll see things like creation date, last modified date. If you want to include, information like who loaded it, or more commonly, it would be things like metadata fields that you can customize your columns to show things like document type, document category, document subcategories, and things like that as well. So once the designer's all done and ready to go, this is kind of what you will see. You'll notice that when anyone logs in to that URL, that localhost web link, which can be hosted on your website, they may have the option to browse. And by browse, that means that you see the full file structure and can just kind of pop through and click on things willy-nilly. So if you want to see minutes, then jump into minutes and follow the file structure as it is. Or if we want to go back and search, you'll have some search options here as well. And actually, it's just going to loop us back because this is the search area. But if I just wanted to type in minutes, hit search, we'll be able to see what that comes back with. Oh, you'll notice too that the welcome to our public portal, browse and search for public documents. So that changed. Oops. Okay. Looks like I'm having some trouble with the search feature, which would explain why we had the problem there. Not a problem. All right, so the other thing I want to look at is equally as important. It's making sure that you're not exposing anything too sensitive to your public users. Because ultimately, remember, this is allowing a user into your Laserfiche repository to view the documents that are in there. So chances are there's going to be a lot of really sensitive information. You want to make sure that they're not accessing too much. So the first step is, I decided I am going to pop into the admin console quick and just show you this. The public portal uses a public user, and so that is a licensed read-only Laserfiche user. And what that means is that the security and everything else is going to be, hold on, I have to log out of one of these quick. Just give me 1 second. That's a fun fact. If you ever get that error that says you cannot log in because the number of users has exceeded its limit or something like that. If you go into the admin console, into all sessions, you'll be able to see who's logged in as each user, and you can just right click and disconnect them. So if you need to get into something, you want to, don't mind booting somebody off, you can do that. All right, so if we pop in here, typically we just call our public user public. It's easy to see who they are that way. But if we go into repository users within a repository, select public, and open it up, you'll see that there is a user with a password. We'll see it's a repository named user, meaning it's a licensed user with access to the system. We need this because when we do the setup initially, we have to say that the user is going to log in automatically with a password, set all that password here. They're not going to belong to a group, but we do want to make sure that they only have specific rights. Typically, we'll want search and print, and I think that search button is probably why the search feature wasn't working for me. But they don't need to scan anything or import or necessarily export, but they can. You certainly don't want them deleting documents. So it's always good to make sure that you have these rights set up in such a way that they're not going to be able to do anything that they shouldn't be able to do. Commonly, we'll just go ahead and hit that allow read-only access button and hit OK that way. From there, if we go into the repository, to allow access to everything, you basically just right-click on it and go to the access rights on that folder, and you'll want to make sure that you add them. And so in here, we added the public user, and we're giving them access to browse, read, and see annotations. Now, of course, we really don't want them accessing our HR documents. So if we look at our access rights here for the public user, I went ahead and just explicitly denied. Now, normally, best practice is to assign your users to a group and then assign security per group, per folder, and to never really explicitly deny, but simply just clear all. Now, for the sake of public user, if you want to be absolutely sure, no one's really going to be upset if you deny all. There's probably not ever going to be a day when, well, maybe we do want our public users to view all of our HR files. I don't think it's going to come. So we can explicitly deny there, but best practice is normally to do basically just clear them all out. If you're not allowing access, then they don't have access. Explicitly deny is that failsafe. But what that's done then is made sure that the public user can view the public documents in the public folders and search and everything else within that, but they can't see anything else. And if you're ever curious and you ever want to know, there's two ways of going about this. Number one, and my favorite, is to simply, one second, let's go back in here, to log in as the public user. And then you can see exactly what they can see. Looks like I have the search function now. Yeah, that's just running issues. No worries. But now we can actually see that if we log in as public, we know exactly what we can and can't access. So that's the easiest way to go about that. If you have that public username and password, you can log in and just see. The other option though, and this goes across, this is true with anybody, if you want to know if they have access to it or not, you can pop in and right click, view access rights. And actually we can go a little bit deeper too. So let's go down into our 2019 folder in ordinances. Because oftentimes we are inheriting rights from the top down. Best practice again is to set the security rights at the root folder and then inherit down. That way you're not managing as many, because obviously assigning security can get a little bit confusing, a little bit hairy the deeper you go and the more users and groups that you're assigning it to. But you have this option for effective rights. And the effective rights are just Well, effectively, what do they have access to? And it'll show you by default what your current connection has access to and just show it grayed out. And then if you want to see more detailed information, it'll tell you why they have access to this. And so you can say, why can my connection search or create documents in the 2019 folder in ordinances? Well, that's because it's allowed from LF government. It's basically inheriting down. So if you want to see a different connection, we can go in here and say public. And you can see that they have view, browse, read, see annotations, and they don't have the rights to do anything else here. If you want to see details, it's actually kind of vague. Append data is denied because there's no access right that has been given. So you can't, as this public user, you can't modify it because nobody's letting you modify it, just because. So I don't know. It's not as detailed as it could be, but sometimes it will tell you that it's inheriting that right from maybe the public folder. So you can say, all right, I can't see anything in the 2019 folder. Why is that? I have access in ordinances. Like, yeah, but you don't have access in the public. So it starts to paint the picture as to where that right originates from. So just to recap here, the public portal itself is accessible from a URL. It'll be server name where the Weblink engine is installed, where that application is installed. There are a couple of other hoops that you'll have to jump through in order to do that. That'll have to be a public-facing web server. You'll have to have an SSL certificate. There's a couple of other options that you'll need, but our support team can walk through all of those requirements with you if this is something you're interested in. And the designer is something else that we can walk through and help you with as well. But I'm hoping that after today, you have a little bit better idea as to what all these features do. I guess one thing I did skip over that I will return to, the search options. As you can see, I mentioned that you can either search by text, entry names, metadata fields, or those annotations. You can turn some of those off. So if you're not interested in people searching by annotation, just flip that off. Fuzzy search is something else I didn't talk about. Fuzzy search is, if you're not a great speller, but you can get close, fuzzy search will help get you over the finish line. And so the fuzzy search is going to be what percentage of the word you want to bring back. And this can get pretty crazy. I usually just go by like number of letters, that if it's not within maybe 2 letters, don't bring it back, because that means that it'll return every single word that has 2 of the same letters. So if you type in mince, it might return minutes, but it also might return 1,000 other things as well. So sometimes I just turn the fuzzy search off and say, you know what, if you want to access something, you're going to have to know how to spell it. I'm sorry. But if you don't have a lot of faith in your users or the general public, you can give them a little leeway and say, all right, ordinances, it can get tricky. Let's give them a couple of letters, or maybe if you're within 15% of the word, it'll return that. And that's something I go into more detail on in some of the other YouTube videos as well, so you can see how that works. Resolve shortcuts is going to be important. If you are setting up your repository in such a way where the record itself is going to be retained in the records management area with all the records management attributes like disposition authority, retention schedules, things like that, and the shortcut is going to be accessible from the public, you'll need to check this box for resolve shortcuts. Just pausing for effect there because it's going to be important. I ran into this issue once. Otherwise, minimum fields, I always set that to 0, minimum 0, but you could up that if you want people to search by fields. And then sorting, sort by relevance, sort by name, sort by date. Relevance is probably going to be the most common. That's just saying that the most context hits is going to drive what displays at top. But if you think year is going to be, make more sense, or creation date, things like that, you can do that as well. And so creation date ascending, and that's how they'll be displayed. All right, well, with that, go ahead and wrap things up. There's a couple of different resources out there. Actually, there's a lot of different resources out there. But the most common are going to be Laserfiche answers. Every question I've ever had, I've been able to find that somebody else asked it before I did, and it was answered on Laserfiche answers. If you're not familiar with the platform, it's the sort of Laserfiche community location where people come in and collaborate. A lot of brilliant minds are active on there. Solution Exchange is another one, as well as just laserfiche.com/support. A lot of good, a lot of help there. And also the Laserfiche help page. If you ever get a chance to just look at the Laserfiche help page for any one of your applications, there's a lot of information. It's like reading a college textbook, but I mean, everything's there. It'll really help walk you through. And of course, the best is going to be if you just want to contact us, www.cdi.support, consulting@citiesdigital.com, or support@citiesdigital.com, or even email me and I'll point you to the right people, steven.cruzfeld@cdi.support. All of us would be more than happy to meet with you, discuss what you're interested in, and try and find a pathway to success. So with that being said, that's all I had for today. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you have. Will we receive a copy of the PowerPoint? No, we don't usually send those out. However, the entire presentation, beginning to end, will be available on YouTube. And one of the main reasons is I don't put a lot of effort into the PowerPoint, for being honest. I don't like PowerPoint. I like to go through and actually demo the solution. I've sat through so many PowerPoint presentations in the past that I try and keep PowerPoint at like 2% and demo at 98%. Now, that being said, if you email me directly and you really want these 7 slides, I can get them to you. It's not like they're under lock and key or anything like that. All right, what other questions? Ryan, you're welcome. I try to be thorough with these things and give you guys as much information as possible to get as far as possible, but invariably, someone's going to go immediately to the design and be like, oh, Steven totally forgot to cover this, and now I don't know what this is. It's going to happen, so I apologize ahead of time, but you know what? That's why we're here, and I am pretty responsive. Feel free to reach out to me directly. Where on YouTube? Okay, that's a good question. It will be on the CDI channel, which, what do the kids say? Like and subscribe. Let's see if I can pull it up, actually. I wonder if I can drop this in the chat or something. So I just put that in the chat for the entire audience, but you could also probably just either type my name or CDI or Laserfiche or something, and I think it'll probably come up. Yeah, go ahead and subscribe to our channel, and you'll be able to see all those. So here you can see I've done a few of these, and they go back to even before I was here as well. We've been doing this for a long time. So a lot of information out there. We definitely have covered every single Laserfiche application at this point, as well as, I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, but CDI actually builds many of their own integrations as well. Some of our most common integrations are DocuSign, Salesforce, Redtail, Microsoft Dynamics, a lot of different CRMs. So that's something else that we do. All right, well, if there are no other questions, then I will let you get back at it. Hopefully, some of you have classes this afternoon for Laserfiche Empower. Those of you who aren't familiar with Laserfiche Empower, feel free to reach out to us. We can discuss that for maybe next year. But it's the big user group. Happens every year, usually in Long Beach, California, where we get to see all of the new applications, all the new enhancements, all the fun stuff that's coming out for Laserfiche and what's to be expected for the following year. So it's an exciting time for us. But with that, have a great rest of your week. Thanks again for taking the time. And feel free to reach out with any questions. Thanks, guys.